Today's session's title is Youth's Engagement and the Traditional Demand of Rigor and Commitment. And we have with us three very prominent personalities from India. We have Ramu Ramanathan from Harwell, who is a very prominent writer. We have Saumya Joshi, who is a very well-known actor, director from Ahmedabad, Gujarat. And we have with us Satyabrata Rout, who is a professor at Hyderabad University and who is also a well-known writer and director. So welcome, three of you. The first question I would like to ask you is, what were your struggle and your challenges in your youth, and how did you deal with them?
So I'll start, Chintan.
Yes, please.
So I'm a child of Mumbai, and Mumbai for the longest had a very strong tradition of one-act play competitions. Again, you can date it back to the first one-act play competition in the early 1930s, which was the Kamgar Rangbhumi. And as a result, that tradition has always been A, very robust, and B, very strong. So I'm, in a way, a sort of byproduct of that. So I started writing my plays in the 80s and benefited very hugely from what was called the intercollegiate play competition. And play competitions is a very big thing in Mumbai. So to give a cricket analogy, it's similar to playing Kanga League or Time Shield. So you play that 1 day and 2 days. And then when you're ready, जैसे बोलते हैं ना, आप तैयार हो जाते हैं, then you start playing Ranji, then you play Ranji, then you play Test, and so on and so forth. So in a way, it really, prepared you. And in those days, cricket and theatre in Mumbai, at least, were on sort of similar, tracks. So for me, it was very simple. I wrote a play. Having written the play, it sort of, used to get rehearsed by a bunch of colleagues and classmates, and then we would perform it. And if you were lucky, then you were able to perform in about 8 to 9 different play competitions. And at the end of every play competition, if your play was good enough or meritorious enough, you got a little cash prize. So it also gave you that added advantage. Of course, things like certificates and trophies, which were incidental. The money was what sort of drove us always. The second thing was we would typically be performing in very hostile environments in the theatre because it is fellow, colleges which you're competing against. So it meant that the good bits would, of course, get applauded, but you had to earn your applaud. And the not so good bits would be hissed and booed and so on. So there was no sort of, this whole civility that we have about theatre, that we need to be polite about, even a bad performance never existed. The criticism from the auditorium was very brutal. It taught you many things. And the third was, of course, a lot of seniors from the theatre who would be watching you and giving you sort of, feedback in real time. Again, extremely helpful in terms of your own development as a theatre person. So imagine you're about 18, 19 or thereabouts and being taken very seriously by people who are immediately putting you, on the same platform as, say, a Badal Babu or a Bhuvneshwar or, some of these great masters. So there was at no point of time you feeling that you are, a novice starting off with baby steps. You always were compared with, the greats. And that is, I think, a good learning, step for many of us. So, and this has been a system which has borne fruit in the sense, I think, all the really important voices in Mumbai's theatre, or at least Western Maharashtra, are children of this system. And so this system has really been, tried and tested, and it has been hugely beneficial for people like me.
And what about you?
Well, like Ramu, I would say I am also a product of the intercollegiate theatre, and I was very fortunate for being in a college which had a fully grown, fully equipped proscenium theatre. And every year, unlike Mumbai, we unfortunately had only one major intercollegiate competition, which still is very, very vibrant, and that is the Gujarat Samachar INT intercollegiate competition. And we all prepared for that, and it was an incredible. There was an incredible intensity attached to that, and 2 months of rehearsing and then performing. But my case was very different from that of Ramu's, because we were working in Ahmedabad. So there was a tremendous void after that competition was over. because once it was over, it was just over. And you were so kicked and thrilled and intoxicated about theater, and you had nothing to do. And that was a kind of a major struggle, because your life, your entire life is going in one direction for that one night or two nights, and otherwise you have this deep void. So at a very young age, I think my struggle, and more than struggle, I think my aim uh, was very naturally, I mean, not in an intended fashion, but my aim became to create new platforms and new audiences, and that was very important. I mean, I naturally, uh, because of this excruciating need to do theater consistently, I had to create my own platforms and my own audiences. And I formed a theater called Fadin at a very young age, and that was the kind of a students theater group. And we started doing things and activities. And there, what happens is that you are actually you start dealing with this uh, for the first time in your life. When you lose your innocence, you deal with this question of parallel versus professional theater. I mean, Gujarat had a very robust and traditionally sound professional theater. But of course, someone like me, a young playwright coming and who wants to talk about the world around him, he is told that if you do these plays, they won't work professionally on the traditional Gujarati theatre. And it took me about 7 years to know that this argument is a complete nonsense. And I started doing parallel theatre because I thought that that's where I belong. I did shows in places like Ouroboros and Prithvi and Rangsharda, and these are the areas. And frankly, in 7, 8, 9 years, uh, got a little bored of it, because again I saw the same audiences, and then came to realize that I live in a state which has a tradition, a very strong tradition of theatre, and at least 150 years with Parsis doing their theatre, and everybody has gone to theatre at one point in his or her life. So it's not like some of many of the states in India. We are very fortunate to have theatre. And then I realized that you do the theatre of your atma, of your soul, create your own audience, do your theatre very genuinely and with intensity and passion, and you reach out to the traditional theatre watching audience as much as you reach out to your so-called academic and very very learned theatre audiences. So now I think at the age of 45, comfortable with doing theatre that I want to do, and it's for the masses, because I think that there is no difference there. If you do your theatre genuinely with love and with equal amount of passion as you were when you were 80, when you were 18, I think you reach out to a very large audience, and I am fortunate to be reaching out to this large Gujarati audience.
Brilliant. Satyabrata ji, what about you?
My coming to theatre is directly associated with my childhood. So I belong to a family, I mean, a traditional family. We have a Jatra theatre company that was running in pre-independence India by my forefathers. And I have seen, I mean, when I was born, the company has been demolished, but still then there are lots of properties, lots of costumes, trunks, bullock carts, and all these things. I grew up with all these memories. And I saw my father performing in dramas. I mean, drama in the sense, not that jatra, but contemporary modern dramas. Because in 60s, Odisha has three. Because I belong to Odisha,
Yeah.
and we have three or four professional theatre companies running in the cities like Kathak and Puri. And my father used to take me to, because he is a regular guy to see those plays in the city. I sometimes I have gone with him also, and I have seen my father performing there also. So in that context, coming to theatre, I do not know when I enter into the stage,
Yes.
but when I regain my conscious, I mean, I am consciously knowing that I am doing all these things when I uh, uh, see myself doing plays with my youth, with my friends in the village, because I belong to a very remote village of Odisha. In the festivals, in the rituals and the festivals, village friends, we gather together and we collect arms, to sell it for theater. I mean, we beg arms from home to home, and people, well, I mean, they give whatever they have, they give, and with that money, we used to do theater, and for that we hire costumes and scenes in those days, that draperies
Yeah.
from the city. And
Yes.
my father used to direct those plays. I remember that. That was my childhood memories.
Yeah.
And secondly, my environment, the area which I belong to, was full of with music, with dance, that belong to a chow belt. We have Nat Sankirtan, we have Kirtan, we have Odissi music, Odissi song, and everything was been, and that Kirtan every day, early morning at 5 o'clock. I am a early riser. I used to get up at 4:30 or 5 till today also. And from that, I have it started from my childhood, because that was because of listening to, getting up, waking up by listening to the Kirtan sound. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. With that sound, so that became that rituals. Though I'm not that pious, I'm not that religious, but still then, those were the things. And going to that kirtan and sitting there playing with mridangam, and singing with them, that sanskar came, that discipline came in me. And at the same time, I also developed another interest in paintings and visual art, visual medium, which I'm working nowadays fully in theater.
Okay.
So the thing is that was coincidence, because my mother itself, she was though I may not say she is an artist, but she knows lots of that craft work, fine
Yeah.
arts work. She is very good in that colorful thread making. I mean, design out of colors, and that, I think, that came to me. So in that way, my childhood passed on, and when I came to college, there uh, I came in contact with many progressive theatre people, because I studied in a college where Odia Navanatya Andolan, that is called progressive theatre movement, that was influenced by Bengal. Of course, it's influences Bengal in 70s and in 70s, mid 70s, when I was in college. That was Revensa College, Cuttack. There I found lots of the theatre groups in the college itself, College Dramatic Society, and they have reading clubs, they have poetry recitations, they have all play reading sessions, and all these things they used to conduct. So there I got influenced, and my father was not interested for sending me to theater, because he knew it's all the plus and minus of the business. So he was interested to make me a doctor, actually, but unfortunately, till my graduation, I couldn't get in medical seat. But after my graduation, I joined in medical college.
Oh, okay.
But unfortunately, it's fortunately for me, but for my father, it was my family, it was unfortunate. I came in contact with two people who are from National School of Drama. So that was the beginning of knowing, because I didn't know about that institution.
Yes.
It was in 1976. I didn't know about National School of Drama, because there was no workshop, and NSD was very small at that time. And nobody knew, and it was very. It was only confined to Delhi and Hindi-speaking belt. But I didn't know ABC of Hindi, not at all. And my teachers, those who came from School of Drama, they talked about, these two NSDMs, those who have joined there in a drama college. There was a drama, they established a drama college under Utkal University. They started a 2 years program, and also they were fine actors, and they used to work in films. So in that context, I came in contact with them, and I know about NSD, and then I left medical science and I joined NSD without I became a buggy, a rebellious, a rebel. So my father cut off all the relationship with me for 10 years, for 10
Okay.
long years. And anyway, whatever the situation, I completed NSD, but there the problem arised. I went to study acting in National School of Drama, but my language, is Odia, and even I didn't know English properly. So that case, I was backbencher. I couldn't. They didn't give me any role, and I got frustrated. Once upon a time, after my passing first year, I was planning to leave this institution because nobody is looking at me. Even they don't know who is he. So in that case, one professor of mine, I really salute to that man. He is no more in the world. He inspired me.
Who
He was
was
a
he? Can you please give us his name?
Professor H.V. Sharma.
Okay.
He was an architect. He was a aesthetic designer, and he is a wonderful painter. Wonderful painter. So he told me, "Oh, don't worry, uh, because he has seen my attitude by watching myself in the library sometimes when I open painting books and see."
Yes.
So that way, he inclined me towards this visual medium of theater, and he offered me lots of books also, and he gave me till two for 2 years, he sponsored me painting materials,
Okay.
oil painting, and he taught me 2 years. I learned paintings from him, and I joined, specialized in design and direction, and completed that course. And
So,
now, yeah,
so we could say that your struggle was mainly, despite the fact that you came from a performing arts family, a family belonging to the field of performing arts.
yes,
There
that
was
was
a
my first
struggle
initiation. That is
there
what,
was a struggle with your own father, and then
yeah,
also at later in life, once you were even at the National School of Drama, there was a struggle related to the language. So,
right, right.
if I could resume it for this first very question, what were
Yeah,
your early struggles and challenges? It could be that, isn't it? And I'm
yes,
sure that there are a lot of students from whichever part in India, and especially who have been groomed in their own language, their first language, their mother tongue, which is perhaps their own regional language, the region in which they reside.
Yeah.
It could be their struggle because I see a lot of students at the Gujarat University also who have brilliant potential, who are extremely good at whatever they do, but they are just good at Gujarati and perhaps not so good at Hindi or English, and this is where they struggle. So they are also
yeah.
watching us here, and from this,
Language,
language could be
language
a
See,
play major
yeah.
role. Language
yeah.
play major role. That
Yeah.
is why, see, that is why I took a challenge to overcome the language, overcome the text, the written text of a writer. So I developed my visual text.
Which
So
is
that was the
interesting.
major reason.
Yes.
It's a challenge I have taken.
Yeah, Chintan, I would, as a practitioner of Gujarati theatre,
Yes.
I would like to disagree on that point there, because in Gujarat we have so many actors. Like I think now Gujarat and Maharashtra are only two states.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Bengal is now, unfortunately, because of the economical problems of the Bengali stage, it's not that anymore. But
Yeah.
Gujarat and Maharashtra are the two only states where actors and practitioners, theater practitioners like me, are completely surviving financially
Yeah.
on theater,
Yeah.
but just by doing theater in our own language.
Right, right.
So this language struggle that you're talking about, I would love to clarify that for Gujarati theater practitioners, that's not a problem at all.
Yes.
But sir,
I think we are much better placed
so
than
the thing
than
that
the Hindi theater and the English theater. See,
Theatre also.
we have an audience of about 200 shows, 250 shows. Welcome Jingi, for instance, is now going to complete 900 shows, and it's an incredible audience. So youngsters in Gujarat, Gujarati youngsters, please don't worry.
Yeah.
We are good. We are good.
Very good. There is also a limitation that comes with that. I mean, of course, we do not need to worry at all when it comes to writing or
Yeah.
performing in your own language, but it's also about exploring the other thing, what happens in other parts of the world or even in other parts of your own country, which is where the exposure remains limited, because then we could also live under the very fallacy of being so proud as Gujaratis and sticking to only our language and don't worry about what's happening in the other parts.
No. It's
Yeah.
not that. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about being proud or not, because
Yes,
that's
yes.
again a
It's a
very
different
very
seminar altogether.
yeah. It's a very
Yes,
it's a very right wing theme. So being
exactly.
proud about
Let's.
it, I'm just saying that for Gujarati theater practitioners,
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
very important that you see theater from other languages. We all grew, we all learned language, lighting from tapasda
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah.
But
They-
you can very well do theater. Don't strive to do theater in other languages. That's what
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
just trying to make clear.
I think Satyabrata ji also is trying to mean the same, because it's what where I come from is that a lot of people from different regions of India, they suffer from the same thing, that they are extremely good at their own regional language, whether it is Gujarati, even Marwadi or Mewadi. They do not have to be so fluent in English or in Hindi. But unfortunately, the way the academia has developed in India, and especially at the university level, wherein you go to train at a certain university, all the education is being imparted mostly in English or in Hindi. And which is where a lot of students could begin with their first struggle with the language other than their own mother tongue. Uh,
yeah,
let's jump towards the next question for this webinar. What are the exercises that you do as a writer and or as a director, and why are they important for you?
I have two simple exercises. I mean, there are many, but I think there are two simple exercises. One is something which I picked up from Arthur Miller. Picked up in the sense it's something that he wrote. So, as you know, he became this big, famous blockbuster playwright. All right. And as it happens with innumerable people in the arts, culture, theater, etc., you become larger than reality. And he felt that he's disconnected from the very people he used to write his earlier plays about. So he did something which I think is quite remarkable. So he's from the US, which is thankfully, blessed with one single dominant language. But he realized that there are a lot of these migrants who are coming in from different parts of the world, and he's not able to get the register and cadence or even the linguistic sort of style of those languages in his plays. And if theater is a true reflection of these things, somewhere, as a playwright, he has become contaminated. So what Miller used to do is leave these little recorders. He had friends who were, sellers of flowers, newspaper vendors, burgers, hamare vada pav jaisa, and he would leave these recorders there and basically leave it there in the morning and near subway stations, near bus stands, near cafes, and then in the evening he would on his way back pick up those recorders, 7 to 8 of them, and then in the evening he would listen to these voices, and then try to imagine who these characters were, who these people were. This astonishingly enough, I mean, unfortunately he started doing this exercise at a later stage in his life, so we don't see a reflection of that on his plays, but you see a reflection of that on some of the post-Miller playwrights in the US in terms of the representation of, say, black voices in Baltimore or
Right.
whatever, different parts of America. That was one exercise he did. The other thing that he did, which I again think is quite astonishing, is that he would again, because he was this sort of A-lister, top-tier playwright, he would always be put up in these presidential suites and, 5-star hotel rooms, etc., when he was visiting or attending a talk. And he realized that again, he's meeting the same kind of, very gentrified society. People talking the same language, concerns were the same. So he would, of course, he had a huge network of, people from the boondocks and what we call the underbelly of the US society. So he would pick up the dingiest district and suburb of that city and go and live in that room during. So he would complete his rituals of whatever the formalities were. But in the evening, he would return to this really dingy little part of the district where probably you would have the red light district, you would have, the bootlegging going on, etc., etc. And then again, meet characters, listen to voices, concerns, and stories. For me, I think these two are lessons that directly or indirectly one tries to share. Sometimes there is a trickle down effect, and people pick it up. Otherwise, 99% of the time, you are sort of struggling in terms of getting this voice through. The point is that, so recently I read a book called Shaggy Bain, which won the Booker Award. It's based in Glasgow, and it talks about what happens to the working class in Scotland during the Thatcher regime. And of course, extremely tragic, very beautifully written, etc. It's when reading that 400-page book, your understanding of what a developed society or even a first world global north country has achieved, you begin to realize how little you know about everything. And ultimately, I think the reason we are all, part of theater, literature, whatever it is, university studies, is that we are probably just still touching only 1% of the stories that need to be told. So somewhere that quest is, I think, on what Miller did, what Svetlana Alexievich does, what the author of Shaggy Bay and Douglas Stewart is trying to do, I think is more or less the same thing. So that's broadly what one tries to achieve.
Could you also just, give us an example? It could be one of your plays in particular that you did a very specific or a particular kind of an exercise before writing, while writing, because you wanted to achieve something and perhaps you were not satisfied or you wanted to try something else, anything, connecting with your own work.
So I'm a little sort of shy about talking about my own work. That I it's sort of uncomfortable doing that. But I mean, a lot of the plays that I do are about research, a lot of research. So my background is an amateur historian, and of course, being a sort of journalist. And even if I'm writing a 500-page worder in a newspaper or a magazine, I am doing about 10x the time of research for that story. So my logic towards that is that if I'm writing a play, then I better make it my job to really do intensive research about that.
Yeah.
So, for example, with a play like Teen Sakina Manzil, and I'll give that because it's probably lesser known. It's basically about the 1944 dock explosion which transpired in Mumbai, and as a result, I mean, three things happened. One was the deaths. Second was the fact that the British colonial government at that time, concealed this fact. And the third was the sort of ignorance of these stories. So there, unfortunately, there was no written material available. All that is available is oral testimonies. And by the time I was sort of part of, examining what happened then, a lot of the people who had survived then were probably, in their 80s. Or if they were children at that time, maybe late 70s or 60s at best. But then they would be, really children. So that was a series of conversations with people who were survivors of that 1944 dock explosion, 14th April, basically. So there, I think I'd done something like 300 odd interviews. But then ultimately, you are sort of reducing those interviews down into, crystallizing it into actually a 2-hour play. So there are two very different things. One is the joy of course, just meeting people and, archiving their voices for posterity. And the second is, of course, the actual, process of writing a play, which is very different from part one.
Yes.
So again, if there is any sort of gyan one has to give, is not to get too carried away by the research part of it. You can get carried away because the stories are fabulous, and every living being has fabulous stories to share, and they are worth sort of reciting over and over again. Yep.
Yes. Soumya bhai?
Yeah, so what Ramu said about himself and also about the practice that Miller did is, I think, the most important thing for every theater practitioner, a writer for sure, but also for actors. You need to be very, very connected with people because, as we say, theater doesn't have a language; it has dialects, and that's the most important thing. Not only that, but also understanding the personalities and understanding people around you, understanding the society, and remain connected. I think that is our most important struggle. It all comes naturally to me because I'm lucky to be very curious, and I'm connected with the rickshawalas and sabzi walas. And but life sometimes brings you to a stage where this process of disconnection starts, and you have to be very conscious about that you're not disconnected. And I try my best to do that. So for in that sense, Miller and what Ramu said are the gurus. You have to be very connected, and you have to have a worldview in order to be a dramatist. No question about that. The
Yeah.
second important thing is a very, very, very crass practical thing. I write one scene every day, and I put my trash can very close to me, and write a scene every day and throw it in the trash can after analyzing and studying it as a critic, because unfortunately playwriting is an incredibly laborious and incredibly craft oriented uh, practice. And in that, your scenes need to be very sharp and precise and concise, and they have to have a certain level of entertainment, however serious story you are telling. And a dramatist unfortunately writes very few plays because drama is an incredibly hard thing to do. But when you come up with a subject which you feel is eventually going to become a play, I think this practice of writing in dialogue is what comes to your help and rescue. So I make it a point to write one poem because I'm also a poet. So I make it a point to write a line of a poem and a scene every day, and that also gives me a kind of a feel that okay, I'm a dramatist, I'm a poet. I mean, it keeps this false notion alive, and that's what I think helps me a lot when I eventually do get a subject and start writing a play.
Lovely. Satyabrata.
So, myself, I visualize everything. That is the aspect, the visual aspect that is more powerful and more stronger with me because of many reasons. Some of the reason I told you in the beginning, but still, then the thing when language in theater, if you say whether it is dialect or language, it is reachable to a certain group of people. That is true. A playwright's text is to be read, and then it has to be performed. But the thing is that when language became a problem with me in my drama school days, it that complex turned into a positive notion, and I tried to develop a kind of theater where language has a minimum use. So even I am a student of B.V. Karam. I worked with him for 22 years. I did my PhD on B.V. Karam theater. While working with Karam, I developed a lot of interest towards sound. Karanji used to say, particularly to me, because I was doing design, lighting, costuming at Bharat Bhavan Bhopal. I worked there for six years with him after drama school. So there he used to say, he used to come to writing book and say, can you see this sound? He used to talk like that. Can you listen to your visuals? Sometimes I couldn't understand it in those in 80s, it is very difficult to understand. But he used to say that there is no difference between sonic and scenic. The sound you can visualize. Then when I remain an experimentalist throughout my life. I do not follow the track that has already been created by our people. So every time I used to create something new that is there in me. So I just while recalling Karanji's word that there is no difference between scenic and sonic, and I recall because my areas, my landscapes of Odisha that is full of rivers. I have a long and strong memory of floods and sea waves, cyclone, all these things, and the sound of all these things that come to me. If somebody stands nearby a river bank and call for a boat, imagine it's 9 o'clock. I went to a market in the village at 9 or 10 o'clock. Everybody has gone sleep in the village around 8:30. So I came late, and I am at the other bank of the river, and the boatman has already locked up his boat on the other side of the river. There was no breeze when I was a child. So then we have to call the person. And in that sound, there is a fear also. There is a fear also, because whether he is coming or not. And the echoing of the sound, the wave of the sound, and that the visuals is created inside it. The visual is there inside it. I try to discover all those things. Even today when I read a play, first its lines, colors, texture, form, that comes to my mind. The image comes to my mind. So then I started, when I do all these things in my theater for the last 15 years. Before that, I was doing musical drama and all these things. But for the last 15 years, I started doing a kind of theater where sound converted into visuals. When there are many imaginary visuals, unseen visuals, visuals are there, but it is not visible on the stage. In our Natya Shastra, in our Indian tradition, also see when the characters are there, the visuals is created in the mind of the audience.
Sir,
and when I take over,
could you, for example, relate one of the exercises that you did predominantly, especially in regards with your play Tumhara Vincent?
yeah, I'll come to that. So that way, I try to create my own text. I call it visual text. It's visual text. It's a text that is written by a playwright. But any playwright has written a text, and that text has visuals, definitely. When somebody has written "मैं वहाँ जा रहा हूँ," that means a visual is coming in your mind. Somebody is moving from one point to another point, creating a line on the space. But the thing is that in between these two words, between these lines, underneath that line, is there any text hidden? That has to be discovered and rediscovered, explored. That I call hidden text.
Yeah.
Hidden text. A text which is hidden underneath a playwright's text. Words. And that visuals, when supplemented with writer's text, can create wonders. That is actually, I'm working for the last so many years, and that Tumhara Vincent, as you told me, is the play where I really did an experiment. I didn't have a text with me. I do not have a text with me when I start my production. I have an idea, I have a concept. That generally people used to do devising productions, but here it's not that much of devised play. I have ideas, I have situations, but when it has been interacted or improvised by my actors with the visual elements like properties, like lighting, through masks, through puppets, and through all these visual elements, a text is developed. And I started writing those texts, and finally I got the play Tumhara Vincent. So it is the actor's contribution, and moreover, in that particular play, though it is based on Vincent's work and life, I have not played. I have gone through Vincent van Gogh for many times, hundreds of times I've gone. But ultimately, what I found, if I create a biopic, biographical play, what purpose it will serve, that is important. What the thing which I'm going to give to my audience. Everybody knows the story, and it is available. There are many films also.
Yes.
There are documentaries. Then what is my contribution as a visual writer. So then what I try to found, the play has been written in two versions. One in a biographical version, another rejecting that biography. It is very difficult one writer when reject himself and burn that script and create something new. That is really difficult. It takes a lot of patience and courage also.
Yes.
So the second text that came out, where he's painting images. I took 20 or 18 or 20 images, and the characters inside the paintings become the characters of the play. They came out from the paintings and started developing a network with the audience through images, through little dialogues, and through poetry, so many other things. And sometimes Van Gogh is interacted through one of his images. If one of his paintings, a painting which he has done in a field, for example, a peasant woman, he directly came and coming out of a frame and started talking with Vincent Van Gogh, and that way they talk about politics, they talk about the situation, the morality, and whatever, the dignity of an artist. In that way, I developed the text of that play. So, particularly in that play, many of the situations has been derived from my own life, because finally I found that every play is an autobiography of an individual person. So that even Ashar Ka Ek Din, if you see Ashar, it's my autobiography. It's written in a different way. Situations may be different, but then why I have lots of ups and downs. My life is a very, बहुत ups and downs है इसमें. And if I enter into my own lifestyle, there are lots of hangout inside, lots of insight inside. So why don't I discover all those things? So my landscape, for example, rivers, seas, everything there in the play. When one day I remember when I went with in a boat. I was rowing a boat in a flooded situation. I was alone. My boat turned upside down, and I was almost going to die in the sinking. And how I get up? That scene also being used in that play, but in a different way. Lots of waves flowing, going. So in that way, I created my text.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting, sir. So, what do you admire and what would you criticize in the youth today aspiring to do theatre, especially the ones in the age group of 18 to 30?
Is the onus on me again? Yeah, okay. So I think I'll just give perspective. I mean, because I wouldn't want to, generalize about anything. But we have to, I think, re-examine certain, certain trends that have taken place. So one of the things, you read, say, for example, Shakespeare, and you read all of that. It was obviously a certain type of privileged times in which they inhabited, and there were obviously patrons who were supporting that. One of the interesting things that transpires, I think, in the 20th century is culture, which was till then a sort of exalted sort of thing, becomes a more commonplace kind of a industry and commodity. And by industry, I deliberately use the word because you see processes of elimination, you see design schools, you see packaging, you see OH, you see a whole lot of other elements which are a part of it. And of course, theatre is a crucial kind of an element in this. So this serves, I think there are two aspects to it. One is that because of this commodification, you find that there is a certain pigeonholing of theatre, for example. And there is an inherent danger in that, because then only certain things are, permitted or not permitted, etc. That is number one. Number two is, as I mentioned to you earlier, and Saumya's experience or my experience about intercollegiate plays and universities. Universities, and I suppose Satyabrata ji would be able to bear this out better, have no longer remained the spaces that they once were, centers of humanistic excellence in that sense. So I think again a couple of things have happened. One is this whole notion of critique, being critical, number one, and number two is the kind of top heavy system that universities have. So inevitably, you end up, attracting similar type of people from similar classes. So, just to give you a more sort of non-theoretical context to it, I went to a school called Saint Stanislaus, which by the sound of it is, sounds very privileged, but it was a government school, and I think I did my 10 years of school education for about 200 odd rupees in a city like Mumbai, in a very posh locality called Bandra. Recently, we completed our sesquicentennial or something like that. It was only when I returned to school I began to realize that, hey, all my classmates were very poor people. I mean, they came from very, quote unquote underprivileged backgrounds. And I was actually committing a crime when I was borrowing their, lunch boxes or stealing things from them. But my point being that Mumbai, because of the way it is a sum total of many languages, many, many cultures, subcultures. The classroom that I inhabited was a constituent of that. So there were Khoja Muslim boys, there was a Kachi Memini, there was a Protestant, there was an Anglo-Saxon, there would be a Palakkad Brahmin Iyer, there would be a Jat from Haryana, etc. And this happened very seamlessly. Today, because of the sort of what we are seeing, this sort of neoliberalization of education per se, the voices within the classroom itself have started becoming lesser and lesser. I mean, there is no scope for any kind of space within that, right? And uh, this, I think, is something that we really need to re-examine, because if two things happen, if this diversity, which we talk about theoretically, is actually getting less and less within the sort of educational pedagogical structure, then somewhere a fundamental flaw in the whole system. That is number one. Two, if you're preventing criticism, by criticism I mean in a sort of formal structure, if you're preventing that even within the classroom space, or even within the educational space, it foments trouble for future generations. If you are going to only have a series of assayers, then that is hugely problematic. So this, for me, to answer your question in a very generic sort of way, this is, I think, my concern. So to blame a child or to blame a bunch of young people saying that you are misplaced in this is very sort of difficult, because it takes a tremendous amount of effort for them to emerge out of this or to outgrow this, because you have a hegemonic structure which is being imposed on them. It is a kind of a thought control, extremely difficult. And I know that we are running out of time. I saw a very fascinating interview of Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, inside the Kremlin. He was interviewed by the Financial Times editor, and it's a fascinating piece of theater where it's about an hour and a half. Putin is talking, and there are two subtexts to it. Putin keeps the Financial Times editor waiting for about 12 hours, and then he gives him darshan in the middle of the night in the Kremlin. So the interview is being shot multi-camera. So you see Putin's bodyguards and the Kremlin people there, and this interview is happening. And you can imagine what must be going on in the mind of this Financial Times editor. So great theater to start with. The second thing is Putin makes a couple of very important points, and one has to listen to him. If we are saying he is the most powerful man on the planet today, and as Marx says, you got to listen to your enemy a little more attentively. He says that our concept of the liberal democracy is obsolete. The Western notion of what this is, the Western notion of dialogue is obsolete. So if someone of that stature is saying this, then I think there are serious concerns for what Saumya ji, Satyabrata ji, and you, and of course we are practicing, because there are going to be repercussions. What are the implications, and B, in terms of craft, how do we tackle this? So again, to answer your question, I think these are serious concerns. The youth have from the time of Socrates onwards always found a path, and I am a firm believer. I'm hugely optimistic that if not us, they will definitely find a way around this sort of dominant voice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I think I would totally agree with what Ramuji said, because that's the most important thing. And I think the youth, I think lots of them are doing great work, and they're very enthusiastic. But I would like them to quarrel very quickly. I think that's where all theater starts. जल्दी जल्दी झगड़ा कर लो यार, अपने आप से झगड़ा कर लो, दुनिया से झगड़ा कर लो, जितना जल्दी वो झगड़ा हो जाएगा एक बार, एंड झगड़ने के लिए यू हैव दैट इन यू. आई मीन कुछ तो है जो तुम्हारे अंदर है, लेकिन तुम जल्दी से झगड़ नहीं रहे हो. So I think the practitioners who are, who are getting into this conflict early are in it quickly. But as Ramu said, that this understanding those conflicts and getting into them, venturing out to sort of fight, is becoming more and more difficult. So that's a big challenge. But lots of youngsters are taking those challenges, and I think that's the only way out
Way out.
for theatre. The second thing is, I think, as I said, the world view, the social connect, and also uh, attempt to watch a lot of theatre, read a lot of plays. These are obviously very important and completely mandatory things that you should be doing. And the third thing, again, always strive to look for your own audiences and creating new audiences. I think that is very important. And I'm glad that lots of youngsters are in the process of doing this. Yeah.
Since I would like to invite you to talk about something in particular, because I know that you have been extremely engaged and involved in working with the youth from the college days itself. You yourself as part of the youth community earlier, and then even after having been an established writer and director, you continued to work with very young actors who were perhaps trained or not even trained, and who started training with you or under you. Can you recollect of an incident wherein you learned something from the youth much later in your life, which is where you realize that, okay, this.
All that I am is what I've learned from them. Because when I was very actively connected with them, and now I'm missing it a little, and I want to get back to that as quickly as possible. But when I was connected with them, I had students from Mansa, I had students from Modasa, I had students from Sojitra, I had students from Limdi. We had Dalit students from the deprived classes. We had students from Charanagar. We had Muslim students from Dani Nibla and Daryapur Charwat and the Latifka area, and we had students who came from in the late 90s, come from the famine-stricken areas. So I was very fortunate of having all the problems of Gujarat meeting me at 7:30 in the morning sharp. So I, as a did that, all those people have actually shaped me as a dramatist and as a theater practitioner. So that material I always had at my disposal, and I was very lucky in that case. Of course, then to take it and convert them into drama, I think, as Ramu said, is a completely different process, and it requires a lot of hard work and your own desk and everything. But to answer your question, I think I've learned everything from the people I met. That's a sum total of my writing completely.
Satyabrata ji?
The current youth is exposed to many diverse aspects of theatre, which was not in our days. Nowadays, we do not know why. I don't know why I came to theatre. I only get the answer when I was already in the mid of the ocean. But today's youth, a student comes to theatre knowing a lot of things before joining in theatre. But the only being working in the academics for the last 30 years almost, because 10 years I did freelancing. So in that 30 years, I have done two type of teaching. One is in workshop, and another is in systematic academic situation, like universities. So both the students are different. Here, I really found what the students are. Honestly speaking, I should not say all these things here in a public platform. This university has to be banned because they have spoiled. They have spoiled the theatre education. The thing is that a student in a remote village, when I used to go there and do a workshop, a 1 month workshop with a small production. Even there is no production, I found a lot of enthusiasm, and I became much younger with these people. I myself, if I continuously work with them, then I can live more than 10 years extra benefit. So that is the power of the youth in India. But when they focused for a study, it's not the problem only of the university. When they focus for studying higher study, then they must be serious. They must be serious. There is no excuse at all. Students come here in the universities because they do not get any other chance in other departments. So theatre department is very liberal, so they will take them. Of course, few universities like our university is very reluctant in that. We never take this kind of students. But in general, I am talking. Apart from a few universities in India, most of the universities, students only go there to pass time and to get a certificate and to do a job. And what kind of job a teachership? A teachership in a school or some instructor somewhere. And few of them do higher study and go for professorship or lecture, assistant professorships. All that number is very less. But that way is the purpose of theatre. Is that we come here. I particularly say I come in theatre passionately, leaving all the things, leaving a lucrative job. I mean, if I become a medical doctor, that the life was completely secret. In the midst of that, I left, and I do not know why. I didn't know why I left. That passion was there, maybe that attraction that towards this medium was there, and that is lacking. That is lacking in the youth. There is no habit of reading. When I say in my class, and I say, please do this job, do an assignment, they will simply go to the internet and search it, and they cut and paste. I used to tell in my classes that to the students that internet can give you information only, and that too very wrong informations. Knowledge is not there. Knowledge comes out of experience, out of discussions, out of understanding. So you explore that. That is why in my classes I used to take handwritten notes only. I don't allow them to type. Then I know that they will copy it and paste it. So that becomes sometimes I got cut in the middle. That why in 21st century you are not allowing your students to type. So that also I have to answer many times. So that way the youth is deluded. We have the responsibility to drag them into the right path. And there are lots of energy in them. Lots of energy.
And that's a very interesting insight coming also from a writer-director who is equally a professor and who is engaged with the youth in a very different way. Then especially because you started talking about the universities and the role of the academics, my next question is exactly related to that. What, according to you, is the importance and role of the academics or formal training? And how would you comment on the academic reality in the field of performing arts in India? And this time, you to start with it because you are already at a university teaching formally theatre and related to the performing arts. The performing arts.
In this Corona time, it is very difficult to teach our students now. I start with that because theatre training cannot be done online.
Yes.
Cannot be possible online. We talk to a screen where we do not know who is there. The students, they are not shown their face. They just put some stickers, and whether they are there or not, we do not know.
Yeah.
So, and how much theory we will teach? For the last 6-7 months, I am teaching bloody ABC every time, but not creating a grammar or syllabus out of, a syllable. When the student is with me, then I can do some practical work. We can associate our theoretical inputs to practice, because theater is a medium of practice. No theory work here. Every performance generates a new theory. Every performance, even same play, 2 nights performance will give 2 different theories. So that way, we theater academics must be practice based.
Yes.
Practice based, and not only practice based, but analytical practice based, which is not implemented in the university system.
Yes, that has not been the approach. Yes.
Analytical practice based, what I say, that why at least one question must be there. Why we are doing that? We must ask a question to ourselves and try to solve the question by finding the answer by ourselves. Nobody is there to teach me. I have to put myself into the trouble, and I have to come out with answer to that. So, as a teacher, it's my responsibility to put the students into the task, into the trouble. As Saumya ji said, that jhagda ho.
Yes, it's basically
Jhagda, in the sense, it's a conflict.
yes.
There must be conflict. There must be a challenge. Students must be put into a challenge.
Yes.
When there is no challenge, so it will be feel good, and everything comes.
Yes.
So students को experience-based knowledge नहीं दिया जा रहा. The reason is that I found the reason. The reason is that in the university, because I joined university very late, at the age of 49, I joined in the university.
Okay.
And that too not by my choice. It's because of my father's choice. I was not in favor of doing a government job, because I was a lecturer in NSD, and I resigned from that post because freelancing का कीड़ा लग गया था. So traveling over the world and doing theater, that was a different asar. But ultimately, it has many good. When I joined university, it has its own benefits also.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I brought a lot of experience. Thousands of shows I have seen, hundreds of plays I have done, and more than 150 or 200 design I have done, lighting, set design, and hundreds of plays I have directed. All that experience, and I have worked with almost everybody in India, and for God's grace, with many important personalities of the world. So with that experience, when I come here, I always used to teach from my own experience. Because these books talk, that is already there in me. Okay, so but these books can become a reference. Only when I read them, then I can understand where are the references. But before reading, I must equip my student with my experience so that they can learn from that, then go for a book. But the thing is that in the university, 99% of the professors, teachers are academic based. The problem lies there. They are coming directly, they do a BA, MA in theater, and they do a PhD, and they joined in the university, and without any practice, they become a professor. They can write books. A teacher can write books, because referring 4 or 5 books, you can write one book. It's very easy. That generally our professors are doing, research books. But that's of no use, because it doesn't connect to any experience of life. When it is not connected to your own yourself, then how that experience will add to the students. So this is the problem. So that is why in the selection of faculty selections, there must be a change in the UGC system. Then only a good academics will come out. Yeah. Secondly, academics is not ultimate. Even without academics, if you work under somebody, that is much better. If you work under people, like people those who are not academical, they are not coming to any drama school or any universities, and they are better teachers, they're better actors, better directors, designers, better writers. So that I have seen in my life. So because they have, every time they face challenges, every time they do not have a solution by that has been already prescribed by others. So they come out of that through their own experience. So that experience is much important. And if that person takes a student as a disciple, the student will do much better work. So in that way, theatre academics must have a reshuffling. It needs a reshuffling in India.
Nice. Thank you, sir.
Well, yeah, Chintan, on this subject, I completely agree with Satyabrat that he laid a lot of emphasis on the practical aspect of theatre. I think that is obviously most important. Uh, I unfortunately have not. I'm not formally trained, but there is also a tendency to take pride in it. I don't have that that pride. कि मैंने तो कहीं नहीं पढ़ा should not be a matter of great pride, because
Yes.
sometimes it is important. But I would say that it's important to be self trained.
Sure.
I remember when I was in FYBA, and there was a Ratan Thiam festival. Myself and a lot of our theatre friends, 4-5 of us, were following that guy from the moment we found out which hotel he stayed in, and that's why we got an incredible access into his world, and lighting and things like that. So there was this very incredible passion uh, to to go close to those masters. Same with Habib Tanveer when he came for his festival to Ahmedabad. We were very fortunate to have a Marcel Marceau performance there. And every time I was able to sort of meet them and be a part of the process. So I think that urge to learn is the most important thing. Second, I love the word that Marathis use for shows. They call it prayog. They call it an
Experiment.
experiment.
It comes
And
from
that,
Natya Shastra.
it comes from Natya Shastra, but they still call it prayog in their professional theatre. And I think that experiment is complete only when you are meeting with the audience. Without the audience, it's like to give a cricket analogy, like Ramu, it's like net practice. It becomes a match only when the audience is there. So when you are being trained, it's very important that you meet the audiences as much as possible. That quantity is extremely important, and I think here is where I've found, if I dare so, great institutes like NSD also wanting. Their emphasis has never been on creating large audiences in Delhi, which could have been an emphasis, and they could have thrown their students much oftener to the audiences, because I think that is the greatest learning. After doing a lots of shows, I now realize how much I learn from just performing over and over and over again, and meeting audiences again and again and again. I think that is the most important training. So I think to watch a lot of theatre and meet the audiences as often as possible is the best training. That's what I feel.
True. Very true. Ramu?
Yeah, I have 3 points. I'll take a little bit of time, but I'll try to hurry it up.
Yes.
Starting point is, of course, what Satyabrata ji said, and I'm sort of enamored by that, is that every performance creates a new theory, right? And I think that's is insightful. There was a play I saw prior to the pandemic. It was a play about Shakespeare. It was a one act, again written by a very young person. Basically, Shakespeare comes to a university and takes up one of these drama courses. And in the drama course, of course, Shakespeare is being taught, the 35, 36 plays. And each, genre of his has been sort of categorized and subcategorized. So comedies and tragedies and, the historicals and the lesser known, etc. And Shakespeare is found wanting in each course and in each class, because everything that he says or does not say is incorrect in view of whatever the oratorial professor voice is saying. And at the end of the whole thing, of course, everybody in the class who sort of reeks of mediocrity passes, and Shakespeare flunks the course. And then of course he goes back to Elizabethan times, and there's a beautiful scene. He's hanging out in a pub, and who is he hanging out with? He's hanging out with poets, he's hanging out with scientists, he's hanging out with inventors, he's hanging out with court khabris, and he's hanging out with the ladies of the night. And then you begin to realize that these were Shakespeare's friends in those days. I mean, he never hung around with theatre people, for example. And this was his fodder, in a way, to write those great plays. And he's, of course, whining and complaining like all great playwrights do that, ki, hi, ye duniya kitni, unjust hai, etc. So that is, that play was interesting. It was sort of, one of those unformed one-act plays, but it has, I think, important lessons for many. I'll try to get the name of this young boy who wrote it, and then, if possible, share the text. So
Please
I
do.
think that, yeah. So that is, I think, one. The second thing is something interesting. During the pandemic, I managed to. So I had kept a kind of a task list that I'll read all the great Marathi autobiographies, and as you know, in Maharashtra there has been like phenomenal. So
Yeah.
I managed to get hold of Mama Varerkar, who is of course a legend, and in those days he was a Congress MP close to Panditji, that is Nehru. Something very interesting happens. He goes to a place called Meghdut Terrace, which is an obscure, unknown, decrepit, absolutely useless kind of a space for theatre, and sees some experiments in theatre of the absurd. And basically goes there evening after evening, and or whenever the shows are, every. So this is a makeshift space in on a top of a building in Mumbai, and they have half converted it into a theatre space. And he watches what he sees. He's also impressed because pre-play there is a short note given about who the playwright is, and contextualizing it for the benefit of the audience. Ki what is theatre of absurd? Who's Genet? Who's Beckett? Etc. And he realizes a couple of things. A, the performances are decent, and B, the rigor of thought that is necessary for this is also equally good. Later, when he meets the writer of those little notes plus the director of the play, he comes to know he's in his early 20s, some 21 or 22. But he's suitably impressed. Now, here is a man of great stature. The question that you asked Saumya ji earlier, that what is the takeaway that you had from somebody young? Varerkar goes to Nehru in Delhi. He, of course, has access to him, and he says that you wanted to start the National School of Drama. I think I found the boy for you. I found the right person for you, not the boy for you. And Nehru says, who? And he says, yeah, but this gentleman is barely out of his teens. He says, yes, but he's meritorious. And then, of course, the famous thing of Alkazi starting, the drama school.
Yeah.
Again, two important lessons. One is to spot merit when it is there. And as theatre people, I think we need to be also compassionate that when we spot talent, we need to, prop that up, number one. Secondly, also not to be
Very
trapped
important.
in these linguistic ghettos that all of us have now unfortunately got trapped in our theatre. See, once upon a time when Mohan Rakesh, Badal Babu, Karnat Saab, Bhuvneshwar ji, Tendulkar Saab, etc. were, at their, height, what we found is a kind of a national theatre which had a national voice. It was not sort of Kannada theatre or Bengali theatre or Marathi theatre and so on, and as a result of it, I think three things happened. One was these brilliant translations of each other's plays, which meant that these plays and these productions were, transpiring simultaneously, which gave rise to this great movement of the 1960s and 1970s, where we had put theatre on the pedestal. Somewhere I find a retreat from that position, and all of us are guilty. I mean, it's not just, we are all bilingual, trilingual at best. And, we can definitely make that, I think, extra effort, because I think it's necessary. These voices have to, lend support to each other instead of fighting these sort of, ghettoized battles. So that was point number two. Point three, specifically, with academics, also I find academic, pedagogy, what I find, and I think it is crucial, and which is also, I think, one of the reasons why the young find a kind of disassociation from theatre, is that somewhere everything has come to a grinding halt in the 60s and 70s. Language of theatre, language theory, the kind of plays that we are studying and evaluating. So what has happened post 1970s, 80s in Maharashtra, maybe because, you have a pool of about 45 to 50 really good playwrights in Marathwada, in Pune, in some of these other institutes, including Mumbai, you have a study of this work. But otherwise, there is silence. Post 1990s, complete and total silence. Does that mean nothing has happened in the last 30 years? Absolutely not. I mean, internationally, you have John Foss, you have Ronald Schimmelfenisch, you have the great, William Kentbridge. I mean, you have masters doing great work there. Likewise, over here as well, some great work that has done. So this, I think, has to be, re-looked at in a very serious way by us, because we will have to provide the data and information. You can't expect university professors to have the acumen and the theatre ability to really understand who the greats and the non-greats are. So, again, I'll just conclude. Sorry, I know I've gone on. But for
No, that's
example,
right.
you had someone like a Namvar Singh in Hindi, right, who never really wrote himself, but he put all these great Hindi writers on the pedestal. Be it Dinkar, be it Nagarjun, be it Mukti Bodh, etc. I think somewhere we need to find Namvar Singh for theatre in these 20 years, where we put, like, where does one locate Saumya Joshi's plays? I think except for Jyoti Ben, who used to write in those days, total silence. There's vacuum. And a few secularists and Democrats have sort of supported the cause, but when he shifted to Mumbai, there almost was a sort of a betrayal. But the thing is, this needs to be evaluated and studied in a very careful way. We have to look at the body of work of 20 plays, 20 years of work, and then connect it with the equivalent Saumya Joshis in other languages. So, I mean, recently, for example, this publishing house in Bhubaneswar has published about, I had shared it with you
You're
about,
very recent to it of this, yes.
eight playwrights, and playbooks by these 8 playwrights. And while talking to this Manu Dash from Bhubaneswar, so he was saying that these 8 are just the tip of the iceberg. I have about another 40, 45 playwrights out there, award winning, with performances and so on and so forth. So again, the point is that there is this huge repository that we're all seated on. We're just being very negligent about it. And I think this pandemic was a good wake-up call, in the sense that we really need to relook at all this in a very serious light. So I'm very glad to you that you've invited us for this confabulation.